You can have gorgeous furniture, perfect paint colors, and great lighting, but one wrong design choice can throw your entire room off. And often, it's not about what you added, but what you overlooked, you rushed, or you copied without a proper plan. And so these little details that I'm about to go through in this video might seem harmless, but they send a message of low effort instead of one of being intentional. So from awkward rug sizes to cringy wall quotes, let's break down the most common mistakes that make your home look cheap and how to fix them. Okay, so the first thing that makes your home look cheap are LED strip lights. I mean, come on. The color on these is usually way too aggressive. Neon pink, neon purple, or this weird sort of crazy green that floods the room and distorts the actual colors of your walls, furniture, and decor. And plus, on top of that, you can often see the strip itself taped around the ceiling or around the window frames with no effort to conceal the hardware or the wire that powers it. These lights also create this harsh glow that makes the entire space feel artificial, like a teenager's room for shooting TikTok videos or just a budget gamer setup. And because the light wraps around the perimeter of the room, it flattens the space instead of adding any sort of dimensionality. Plus, the glow pulls the focus away from everything else. So from the furniture, from the layout of the room, and even natural light gets drowned out. And so these LED strip lights really read as temporary lighting because they're not the kind of thing that you'd expect in a thoughtfully designed home for adults. Plus, the cheap tape and the exposed cords often wear out or just sag over time, which makes the setup look messy and unfinished. So what should you do instead? Well, you should use LED strips as indirect lighting, not as decoration. So to think about this, they should accent the architecture rather than defining the entire mood of the space. So you can install them behind a headboard, under a floating shelf, or just have them recessed into the millwork directly so that the source of the light is hidden. Then you want to choose a warm color temperature, somewhere around 2700 to 3000 kelvins, which creates a soft ambient glow that mimics natural lighting. And you want to make this a part of a layered lighting plan, so you pair it with table lamps, with sconces, or with dimmable overhead lights to create a balance in the room as opposed to this just flush of pink and purple everywhere. And they keep the rest of the room calm and grounded because when the lighting is subtle, then other design elements have space to shine. And even a single warm LED placed in the right position can make your space feel upscale, intentional, and so much more cozy. So the bottom line here is that it's not about removing LED lighting completely, but instead it's about using it with restraint and control. Okay, so number 2 on the list here of things that make your home look cheap, and I can speak to this one personally because unfortunately my mother loved this stuff. I'm talking about quote walls and gallery walls. Okay, so what am I actually talking about? I'm talking about using random words like love, family, home, laughter, putting these all over the wall. It just feels overly staged and really impersonal because it's decor that says nothing about the people who actually live there. And these pieces are often mass produced and made of plastic or lightweight MDF, which just looks generic and low end when you get up close to it. And if you really end up pushing this, then you just overmix everything. You got metal letters, wood cutouts, clocks, keys, frames, arrows, right? The entire wall just becomes a jumble of styles and finishes, and it looks really bad overall because there's no clear grid, there's no breathing room, and there's no visual anchor. And when you mix too many fonts and frame types, you just create visual noise instead of a clean, cohesive story. And even if you try to put a heartfelt message through, it loses its meaning when it's plastered across every surface in this, this cursive sort of script that we're all familiar with. And in my view, it just gives off the impression that you're trying too hard. Like you're trying to fill the space for the sake of it instead of designing the space with intention. Okay, so what should you do instead? Well, for the quotes, just throw them out the window. Get rid of those. They're hideous in any space, so just get rid of them and consider yourself better off for it. But if it comes to a gallery wall, you want to curate it like a real design element, not like a Pinterest board gone rogue. Okay, so stick to a consistent frame style. That could be all black frames or all gold with white mats. Whatever it is, you want to create a sense of order and balance. Now, if you're showing off personal photos, then use ones that actually matter to you and let them breathe with clean spacing. And to be clear, I'm not saying you can't add personality here, but if you're going to do that, then add it with subtlety, okay? So one line art print, one small sculpture, one custom piece, not just a smattering of everything all over the same wall. So try out a grid layout or a thoughtfully staggered arrangement with plenty of negative space, because it instantly looks more high-end when you have more space and fewer things on it. Or you can just go minimalist with a single oversized piece. But please, whatever you do, do not allow your walls to scream at your guests to live, laugh, love. Alright? Your walls should feel collected, considered, and calm. Okay, so the number 3 thing that makes your home look cheap are curtains that are too short or too narrow. Because when your curtains end a few inches above the floor, or God forbid even higher, it makes the room feel smaller and less grounded. You know, these short, sometimes known as high water curtains, they visually chop the wall in half, and they bring the eye downward, which lowers the perceived ceiling height and makes the room feel a lot more dense. And as a little aside to that, having the curtain rods mounted too close to the window frame also make the space feel cramped, and it just looks builder grade as opposed to designer level. And if you've got these narrow kind of curtains that barely cover the window or don't even close fully, then they just look like an afterthought, as if they were installed just to tick a box, like, yes, we have curtains, as opposed to evoke some sort of mood or feeling. And even with nice fabric, if the length and width are off, then the entire window treatment feels off as well. And then cheap or shiny fabrics like faux silk or even just polyester can catch the light in the wrong way and highlight the wrinkles or creases, which just doesn't look very good. And overall, making any of these mistakes just sends a message of rushing or cost cutting, as if the room was thrown together with leftover materials instead of being designed specifically for that space. So what should you do instead? Well, first, always hang your curtains as high and as wide as your space allows, because this draws the eye upward and it makes the ceilings feel significantly taller. Go for floor length or even puddled curtains where the fabric just kisses the floor or slightly rests on it. And then mount your curtain rod 4 to 6 inches above the window frame or all the way to the ceiling if you want something extra dramatic. And then extend the rod at least 6 to 10 inches past each side of the window so that curtains can fully open without blocking any light. And when it comes to fabric, you want to choose heavier fabrics like linen, cotton, or even velvet that have weight and texture to them, because they fall better and they just feel so much more luxurious. But to be clear, you don't need an expensive fabric, because even inexpensive curtains can still look elevated if they're sized and hung properly. So the right length and the right placement adds so much more polish, balance, and just a sense of intention to the rest of the room. Okay, so mistake number 4 that makes your home look cheap are rugs that are just too small for the space they're inhabiting. And I think we've all seen this before, right? A rug that's sitting awkwardly under just the coffee table with nothing else touching it. It feels a bit like an island floating in the middle of the room instead of tying the layout together. And the scale of it is just way off, because you've got a big sectional or some kind of seating area, but the rug only fills half the space. And so visually, what this does is it makes the room feel smaller, not bigger. It's like you're trying to make do with the rug instead of designing a space with intention. And so even if that rug is beautiful on its own, having the wrong size just cheapens the entire setup. And so here's something you see all the time, right? In long hallways, if you've got a runner that doesn't stretch the entire length of the hall, it just makes the space feel disjointed and kind of chopped up. And so the way that most people interpret this is that when you've got a rug that's too small, it almost always looks like it was chosen based on price, not based on proportion. And that's not what you want people to think when they're stepping into your space. So what should you do instead here? Well, you want to choose a rug that's big enough for the front legs of all major pieces of furniture in the room to sit on, or even better, if you can get all 4 legs of all pieces of furniture onto that rug. And so in living rooms, the rug should go beyond the coffee table and at least partially under the sofa and chairs. And in bedrooms, you want to make sure that your rug extends on the sides and the foot of the bed, not just at the bottom. And then in offices or dining rooms, your rug should anchor the entire space rather than just sitting under the table legs. And then, as I said a second ago, for more narrow spaces like kitchens or hallways, you want to choose a long runner that matches the full length of the area and doesn't fall short. But if your budget is tight, you can actually layer rugs by placing a large neutral base rug underneath and then a smaller accent rug on top. But overall, a properly sized rug instantly makes a room feel cohesive, elevated, and finished, regardless of how much the rest of the furniture costs. Because at the end of the day, making your home look elevated isn't about how much you spend. It's actually much more about how intentional you are with your design choices. And so when you choose the right proportions, focus on balance, and skip the shortcuts that cheapen your space, the result always feels so much more polished. So throw out the glow up gimmicks and the tired wall quotes. You're looking for clean lines, good scale, and subtle detail. Because your home doesn't need to chase trends to feel expensive. It just needs to feel thoughtful, and that's what makes it timeless.